Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Monday, the 14th of March 2022. These are the stories that we'll be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Pakistan that has urged the United Nations Security Council to focus on the ongoing violence against women in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Despite different reports that have come out, whether it be from Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch or even the United Nations Human Rights Commission, nothing concrete has yet been done by the Indian government, or no proper pressure has been put on the Indian government to stop these brutalities, especially when it concerns women in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir Valley. Is rape being used as a political tool? We will be talking with our guests in our first segment about this and much more about the valley. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Pakistan that is going to send emergency aid to Ukraine as a message of solidarity with the people of the country. This was decided in a meeting of the federal cabinet, and of course 60 million rupees worth of goods will be sent via 2 aircrafts to deliver aid goods in Poland for the Ukrainian refugees. This is going to be our third story. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, in all of this scenario in which the entire world is gripped by the economic woes, there are solutions for the people that we will be highlighting time and again on what you can do. In this last part of today's program, we'll be talking about how to invest in the stock market through programs such as the Sahulat account, which is more or less a simplified way to invest in the Pakistan Stock Exchange for those who are not really understanding how the stock exchange works. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first story, and that is about the brutalities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, with particular reference to the women and the girls. And here I'm talking about rape as a political tool used by the Indian government. More in the following report.
The escalating Indian atrocities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir render the occupied valley as most dangerous flashpoint in contemporary world. Reaffirming its enduring commitment to Kashmir cause, Pakistan's United Nations Ambassador Munir Akram has urged the UN Security Council to consider the ongoing violence against women in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. During a Security Council debate on the week-long International Women's Day, Ambassador Munir Akram revealed that there is documented evidence of rape and sexual violence being used as a weapon of war against women and girls in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Exhibiting systematic human rights violations against minorities, particularly Muslims, Indian troops have reportedly shut down an educational institute, Darul Uloom Khadijatul Kubra, in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and maltreated the female students before forcefully evicting them. Pakistan has strongly condemned the heinous incident and called upon international community, including the United Nations and OIC, to take immediate notice of the alarming level of Islamophobia in India. Vindicating Pakistan's stance, a former registrar of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, Adama Ding, highlighted genocidal violence in India at a recent virtual summit in Washington on genocidal hate speech and the state's responsibility. Muslims and other minority groups remain vulnerable as mob violence and extrajudicial murders are a new norm in India under Hindu nationalist BJP government.
To discuss this very important human rights abuse, we've been joined by Barrister Safi Ghauri. He's a political analyst. Safi, thank you very much to have joined us. Safi, we talk more or less a lot about human rights with you on different previous segments as well. Here, if we look at what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it reminds us of other such incidents that have been happening across the world, just like in Rwanda. When you also look at the different reports that have been taken out by the human rights organizations such as Amnesty, such as Human Rights Watch, such as the United Nations Human Rights Commission, it points to a systematic use of rape as a political tool in the held valley. Why is there no action yet taken by any of the important human rights organizations or the bodies such as the United Nations?
Right. Thank you, Omar, for having me on your show. And this is a very, very important issue, something that is absolutely shocking. You've just mentioned the tribunal and the Commission of Rwanda. And it pains me to say that the incidence of rape in Kashmir is the highest in the world in any conflict zone. It's much higher than Rwanda, much higher than Sierra Leone, much higher than Chechnya, any other place that you can think of. And that's because you rightly stated that it is being used as a weapon of war. And the primary reason why nobody's doing anything about this is because India is so closely allied as one of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Now, it's not a permanent member, but it is allied with the permanent members and wishes to get on the seat. And not just that, this is one of those countries that wants to become a permanent member of the Security Council and yet does not subscribe to the International Criminal Court. There is nowhere for these people to go. So this violence, this terrible violence is taking place, but Indian law, and it's absolutely shocking when you look at the law. The Indian law itself makes every provision possible to encourage this systematic violence against women.
But
And
what is very strange, I mean, now that you are pointing out at the Indian constitution and the Indian law machinery, what poses a lot of question marks is the very fact that India claims itself to be the largest democracy. One of the basic principles of any democratic institution or country or nation is the fundamental rights for every human being, whether it be a man, a woman, a child, or a girl. If those rights are not being properly provided to the sects of the community, then how can a country be called a democracy?
no, it's obviously not a democracy, Omar. It's absolutely shocking. I remember when Article 370 was amended, there were a lot of articles, and you probably remember back then as well that there was a big brouhaha all over the Indian civil society and the Indian public, and right then I remember that there were a lot of rape fantasies of Indian men which started coming out of them wanting to dominate and subjugate Kashmiri women. And this continues with the law. Unfortunately, even as the law gets amended every time, the Indian law just becomes worse and worse. And the true primary laws that are leading to this, one is the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This Armed Forces Special Powers Act disallows any Kashmiri from filing a case against any officer of the Indian Army until the government of India itself allows. So anytime a woman who's raped has to file a case, she cannot go to the court like any other normal person can. She has to first seek permission from the government of India. And if the government of India so allows, which it has never allowed a single woman, then only can she file a case. And then after filing a case, who knows how long it will take, what will happen. So that's one law. And the other law which was recently amended is POTA, which is the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Umar, it's absolutely shocking. This law gives the Indian Army blanket powers. They can pick up anyone they want without question. They can detain anyone. They can take anyone anywhere. They can cordon off anyone. It's basically given them complete authority to do whatever they can. And that's what they're doing. They're using rape as a weapon to humiliate the Kashmiri men, anyone they feel is a freedom fighter, whereas 90% of all rape victims, male or women, are all of them are civilians. But what they do with rape as a weapon of war is that they rape women in front of their families so that they could bring shame upon the Kashmiri men, so that they feel like the Kashmiri men have been demasculinized, and then they make fun of those Kashmiri men and they say, you can't even protect your woman, how are you going to get a country? This is an imperative part of the cultural war, and this is something that is documented. Indian scholar Shubh Mathur says that this is an essential element of the Indian military strategy in Kashmir. This is how they intend to win the war, by using rape as an ingredient to try and subjugate men, to try and take out of those men that spirit to fight, that spirit to try and resist the Indian invasion of Kashmir. And it's absolutely shocking because this is not just the act of one individual. This is not the act of one soldier. This is the act of an entire army.
And this army has the backing of the entire Indian government as far as such brutalities, such acts are concerned. Such acts which, as per Genocide Watch, are leading countries such as India towards genocide. Now, the whole world is watching, the whole world knows, the whole world observes. We've got organizations that regularly report on human rights abuses, yet the world does not blink an eyelid because of certain interests that countries in the West have as far as India is concerned. What is the boiling point where the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and elsewhere for that matter will no longer take abuse and will react in a manner equally aggressive or violent as the Indian forces?
It's bound to happen any moment now. I obviously don't know what the tip is, Omar, but I want to just point out at the hypocrisy of the world. A few days ago, on the 9th of March, we had an Indian missile fall into Pakistan. and India got away with it by saying, "Oh, sorry, a mistake." Can you imagine what would have happened had it been a Pakistani missile falling into India? Can you imagine the international outrage? Can you imagine how the Indian government would have taken it? I salute Pakistan for behaving in such a mature manner, for not making a massive fuss about it and not bringing both the countries into a head-on collision of war. Pakistan's a very different country. India would have behaved entirely differently. The world would have behaved entirely differently. And that's what it is. I do feel that this hypocrisy when it comes to Kashmiri women, Kashmiri men, anyone pertaining to Kashmir, of course, this is something that's exceedingly shocking for the whole world. Like you just mentioned, this is not just a rape of one person. This is genocide as per the Geneva Convention. This is classified as genocide by the Rwandan Commission, and it's shocking that despite the fact that there have been calls by international jurists and scholars to take India to the International Criminal Court, not a single country has done so. A country
You
that
know, the
goes to the
ICJ,
United Nations.
it's interesting that you point about the International Criminal Court and the ICJ, and there are so many other organizations as well that where you can take a case such as what is happening to the women in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, yet there's no such reaction emanating that these bodies want to take up cases such as these. On the one hand, Pakistan is being put on the grey list and continues to be put on the grey list of the FATF. On the other hand, we have all the incidents that are happening in our not so friendly neighbor. And when you look at the continuous spate of such incidents, such barbarities, nothing tangible really happens to our not so friendly neighbor, I'd like to repeat again. And so they are given a free rein to do whatever they want, whether it be in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, to the women, to the men, to the children, to the elderly, or even in other parts of the country to the different minorities. In your point of view, which organization, which country can really make a change as far as bringing about some kind of relief to this population in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned?
So your first question is why India is not taken to the International Criminal Court. This is where it becomes really funny. India says that their own legal system is better than the International Criminal Court, and they say that our legal system is well equipped to deal with it. As much of a joke as it is, this is something that the international community is seemingly agreeing with. They don't seem to have a problem with the fact that this massive problem is not being addressed by a bench of international judges. Instead, they're happy that some RSS appointed judge sitting in Jammu is going to be looking at the matters, if at all. If at all, there's a high chance that won't happen either. Omar, at the end, all of this comes down to the fact that international law is unfortunately consensual. You cannot forcefully, it's not like a police. There is no international police that can go and arrest a person, issue warrants, and then bring them out. These are the kind of courts that you have to go to yourself. India does not have any belief in international law. Clearly, this has become very obvious by the recent incidents, not only in Kashmir but also on the incidents that have been happening in Pakistan, crossing our border through land and also through sea. There was yet another incident where
Yes.
where an Indian submarine entered Pakistani waters. So clearly, India has no respect for it. But obviously, then it comes down to international powers, the members of the United Nations Security Council. These are the ones who have the powers under the United Nations to
But it seems that as if
act.
these powers who say have the might to do to bring about the change for the positive are not doing anything or do not want to do anything when it comes to India. But when it comes to, had the same thing been happening, Safi, and I'd like your point of view, had the same thing been happening to in any other country, especially a Muslim country, what would have been the reaction from the United Nations Security Council? What would they have done by now?
I'll give you an example. So there is documented evidence by the Human Rights Watch, by Amnesty International, by Doctors Without Borders, by a lot of international scholars that the rape incidence in India is the highest in the world, at close to 13% of all women having been raped. 63% of all people have had somebody in their relatives having been raped. This is the highest in the world. And despite the highest incident, we don't see the kind of lashback that has happened compared to other countries. Compared to, for instance, Congo. Congo is a very poor, small country. Congo is not even a Muslim country. But when rape happened in Congo, there was an international hue and cry. When rape happened in Rwanda, they called it a genocide. When rape happened in Chechnya, even though it was Muslim women, it was still something that got more international press and attention. This is where it's getting minimal attention, simply because they do not view India as one of those responsible countries. They this is increasingly leaving the realm of law and going into the realm of who has the power, and they can do whatever they want to do. And that's the unfortunate scenario with law. I feel this degradation of law is going to be something that causes problems anywhere in the world. We have had degradations of the law from Israel to Palestine. Now the same thing's happening in Ukraine, and we see Russia using those same arguments that Israel has been using. Now that India is not taking to the law, these things have a way of coming back. So I do find I do find it to be very sad that as a lawyer, I do find it terrifying that people don't seem to respect it enough. But there's nothing you can do if that's what the situation is.
Coming back to law, and this is something that you are a master at, can there be provisions made by the same bodies such as the United Nations Security Council or the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice that bring about such perpetrators to justice without there being any kind of very aggressive intervention by other countries or other populists?
Right. So in India's case, International Criminal Court, many jurists within the International Criminal Court have already asked India to come forward. They are refusing the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. The ICJ, once again, like I said, it's consensual. India may or may not do anything about the ICJ, but the Security Council has the right to call.
All right, Barrister
and
Safi, we'll continue our conversation with you as far as this very important topic is concerned. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom, and we are discussing the usage of rape as a political tool of war, and especially in the case of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Barrister Safi Ghauri, political analyst, joins us back online. Safi, thank you very much to have stayed patient with us throughout the show. Safi, when you look at the laws and you understand law much better than I do you feel that some kind of amendment needs to be made or could be made, because no law can be amended without a consensus by all the parties concerned? Do you feel there is that political will to amend laws for the benefit of all those who are under the brunt of nations and regimes such as that of the BJP, and where rape is being constantly used as a tool to subjugate the people?
Right. So, Omar, when we talk about the balance of power in a country like India, we have to look at the various lawmaking authorities. Now, obviously, there is the one singular lawmaking authority, which is the legislature. And it's very obvious the legislature is not interested in amending the law because the legislature is consistently passing increasingly draconian laws. So to expect that the legislature would suddenly backtrack and make kind laws would be something that wouldn't be the smartest thing to do. The second authority that we could expect to get involved in lawmaking is the executive on the military itself. Those two, both of them, the executive, the bureaucracy of India and the Indian military, are hand in hand. They are consistently exploiting the Indian populace. Finally, we come to the last authority that we have in India, and that is the judiciary. Now, I just want to quote to you one case which would answer your question. In 1991, there were mass rapes that took place in India of around 55 women in the valley of Konan, Poshpura. I might be getting the name wrong, but it's something of the sort. It's a very famous incident. This is a mass rape incident where women of several villages were raped as a method of terrorizing the local population and subjugating them to the control of the Indian military. And at that point of time, we did not have the laws that I've just spoken about a little while ago, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, the Armed Forces Special Provisions Act. These laws did not exist. So these women went to the court. The court decided that this was a matter that required a certain commission to be made. So they formed a special commission to investigate into this. This incident took place in 1991. We are now in 2022. The commission has done nothing. Because the commission was doing nothing, those women then took the matter up to the High Court. The High Court said that there isn't sufficient evidence, so they took it to the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India in the year 2017 gave the commission 30 days to decide. Those 30 days have still not ended. And despite the fact that those women continue to go to the Supreme Court, continue to say that their rights have been violated, that their dignity has been violated, that
All right. So the fact remains that, Safi, on the one hand, when the law is used by different sects of the society for law, for justice, but at the same time, the same laws are also misused. The same organizations, the same bodies are also, misusing their power in order for misinterpreting or not interpreting the laws for the benefit of the victims. In this case, victims of rape, and in this case, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. When you look at law, when you look at justice as a means to also acquire some kind of resolution to disputes or to issues, don't you feel that there needs to be a universal or global understanding of what justice is, how it needs to be applicable in different forms and measures? Or do you feel that it will continue to be used as and when to the benefit of regimes, nations and societies?
So, a great question, Omar, and honestly, it's a very difficult question. To figure out what justice is, it's not an easy question. The study of what justice is called jurisprudence. There are many jurisprudential philosophers. There are entire degrees that are conducted by universities like Harvard, which explore the subject of what justice is. So, whereas there might not be an exact consensus on what justice is exactly, but there is one rule that we can all agree upon, and that is the golden rule. And the golden rule is justice is that which you do not want to happen to yourself. So if you don't want to get killed, then you shouldn't kill somebody else. If you don't want to get raped, please don't go and rape anyone else. If you don't want to get robbed, don't rob others. Anything that you don't want for yourself, don't do to anyone else. It's a very simple golden rule. And that is what the definition of justice is. Unfortunately, in India, their perverse fantasies of molesting and raping Kashmiri women, as I mentioned earlier, is something that is a cultural issue. It's not the act of one soldier who has gone awry. It is something that is inculcated into their mindsets because they continue to believe that this is how Hindutva would be glorified, that this is their victory over the Muslims. That is why they want to do this, because they see this as an act of domination. They see this as a retribution to their own self imposed beliefs that they have been ruled over Muslims for over 1,000 years. And these are not things that the Kashmiris say. The Kashmiris have nothing to do with it. Present Kashmiris, most of all, they're the most exploited and the most victimized people in the world. Yet these are the ones who are continued to be subjected because of the rhetoric, because of the hate speech, because of the kind of damage that the Indian media is consistently doing and
And of
filling
course,
up
this damage
poison
goes
and
on as
constantly.
we speak. Every day that passes, there is some new kind of a pressure tactic that is being used on the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, whether it be the women, the children, the girls, the boys, the elderly, or the men. Thank you very much, Barrister Safi Ghauri, political analyst, who have joined us, who have talked to us about this very, very important issue, that is the usage of rape as a tool in wars, and especially in cases such as what is happening on the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the barbarities that are being perpetrated by the Indian forces, by the Indian government, the RSS regime, the BJP government over there. I'd like to end this with just a little phrase that comes to my mind very quickly, and that in this case, justice is indeed blind. Let's come to our last two stories, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns, the first is what is happening in Ukraine, and Pakistan has decided to send emergency aid for the people, for the refugees of Ukraine, and this will be sent via special aircrafts to Poland. And of course, this is for the people who are undergoing a lot of misery because of the current crisis that has engulfed the region. And Pakistan's cabinet has decided to send goods worth 60 million US dollars, and that will include 100 tents, 500 blankets, 500 sleeping bags, 30 generators, 3.5 kilowatts, 2,500 soap bars, 995 hand wash bottles, about 1,990 packs of 250 million sanitizers each. They will be sent through special C-130 aircrafts. So Pakistan is, of course, helping those who are in need. And then let's come to our final story, and that concerns, ladies and gentlemen, the economy. Now, when you are under economic pressure, and a lot of people are, not only in Pakistan but across the world, you think of solutions. What could be a good solution so that you could generate more income for yourself, for your family as well. And in case of Pakistan, there are certain options that are available, and we wanted to discuss that at the end of our show. And in this case, this is the Sahulat account, which is a simplified version of investing into the Pakistan Stock Exchange. This will facilitate new customers, those who do not understand the complexities of what stock exchange is and how to invest properly, to kind of invest and get revenue in return. They fall, of course, in a low risk category. You need to tackle the inflation and, of course, tackle it head on. As of 30th of June 2021, there have been historical returns from the KSE 100 index for the 10-year period from 2021 to 2021, and therefore you can, of course, invest in small schemes to begin with, and then, of course, once you understand how the stock exchange works, then you could, once you are better understanding the whole mechanism, you could invest even more. There is a return, you need to know how to go about it. That's how we wanted to end today's show. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segments of stories that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay tuned, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.